maybe you as a mom have a really high need for order, and this kid is chaotic. Maybe you have a high need to control how things go because that's always worked out for you, and this kid isn't going to let you control them. They might let you be in charge, but not control them. And you might also have some wounding from what it was like for you to be little that you haven't looked at, and you're kind of repeating with this kid, or they're reminding you of your parent.
Hey there, and welcome to the Parenting Reframe. I'm Albiona Rakipi, mom, parenting coach, life coach, and someone who has spent over 20 years helping families navigate the wild, wonderful world of raising kids. But here's the thing. This podcast goes deeper. It's not just about parenting tips, it's about personal transformation, because parenting our kids also means learning how to parent ourselves. From fear to creativity, from disconnection to deep connection, this is where growth gets real. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. You guys, this week I had the absolute pleasure of talking with Mary Van Geffen. She was a treat, and you guys are going to love it. She's just recently written a book called Parenting a Spicy One. So yes, if you have a strong-willed child, a spirited child, a child that we describe as defiant, any of those things, deeply feeling, you will want to listen to this episode. Mary herself has parented a child and talks about her own journey, but she's also a renowned and well-respected parenting coach. And she does a lot of work in this space, specifically with mothers who feel very overwhelmed. So in this episode, we talk a lot about how the parenting journey is really a journey where we look at ourselves first. It starts with us. How do we bring a calm, more integrated version of self to the table? We also talk strategies. She shares scripts that are so helpful to parents who are overwhelmed in this position. She just has so much wisdom, and she is so funny. I think you're going to really love this conversation. You're going to love her book. And without further ado, here is Mary Van Geffen. Welcome, Mary. I'm so excited to have you here. We were just chatting a little bit before the recording, but you have authored this amazing book, Parenting a Spicy One, which I love, and you're speaking my language and right to my heart. So before I even jump in and just start to say, I have a million questions. I showed you like all the notes that I've written out and have ready to go, but I would love to just let the audience have a quick minute to get to know who you are, if they don't already know, because your Instagram is amazing. I love it. You bring a smile to my face every morning when I see your posts. So tell me a little bit in the audience about, who you are and what inspired you to write this book. And then I want to get into like the real meaty questions around all the great advice you have for parents.
I'm Mary Van Geffen. I call myself the international parenting coach for the spicy ones. And I am a spicy one. I have a mother who's a spicy one. And I was brought to my knees by my daughter who's a spicy one. I also have a mild child. And so I've seen some of the gamut of who kids come out as and what we have an impact on and what we don't. And there's so much that we don't. But then there is so much that's within our control. And my kids right now are 21 and 18, and things are really good. And I feel like there was no support for me when I was making my child really wrong. I wanted a diagnosis. I wanted to know why she was bringing up these feelings of rage and inadequacy in me, because I was a high performing. I had my master's. This was supposed to be a piece of cake. And parenting did not feel like common sense to me. I couldn't use the same skills. And I tried finding somebody like you who would like maybe come into the preschool and watch her with her peers, because she would say really like maniacal stuff. At the time it felt maniacal, right? My lens, everything was like, I have a bad seed and I don't want anyone else to know. And so I've got to get help in private. And meanwhile, she was just like a CEO boss babe who is like an amazing adult. She was in Morocco last week. She makes things happen. She she can handle adult conversation. When she was 7, she could entertain adults. Like, she's just an intense, powerful being. And I didn't have the framework of how to be the mother of somebody who was so powerful and defiant and wasn't checking off all the boxes I had for what I thought parenting was going to look like.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. So resonant. It's what so many of the parents I work with will describe, very similar things that you're saying. I think You and I have the perspective of looking at things in the rearview mirror. My kids are also older. They're 22 and 19. And I think when I began writing, I just started this journey off as I used to write locally in the Detroit area, just parenting content. And a lot of it just came from this notion of watching what parents were going through and recognizing that we might just be missing this mark and that our kids are really here to teach us, to help us grow in a way that helps them connect with then whatever it is that they're going through. So I laughed so hard when I read, even in your introduction, it was like, welcome to the 18-year spiritual journey that you didn't know you were signing up for. And it's so true. It's like, oh, I didn't know I was going to be in the longest retreat of my life trying to figure out who I am and who I'm supposed to be for this child.
I like to say that kids are your curriculum. This kid is here to show you the spots that are left unhealed, unself-reflected upon. And if you can do this healing work when your kids are little, teenagehood is a piece of cake because you aren't in this weird power struggle of I need to look like I know what I'm doing. And there's more collaboration. And I just loved having teenagers. The old me would have been terrified of it. I would have bought into that thing of get ready. If they're hard now, it's going to be even harder. No, it's not. When you build an attached relationship and you learn how to lower the stakes inside your body, and and various other things I talk about in the book.
Totally. You and I share a lot of similarities in that. I work a lot on the inner parenting piece, right? Nothing changes unless we change something we're doing, right? So to just hope that suddenly one day they're going to just wake up on the right side of the bed and life's going to be much better, you're kind of selling yourself short. So let's start at the beginning and let's talk about a little, you break it up in the book really nicely, and there's 4 very specific things you look at when you're talking about a spicy one. So tell me how you would describe if somebody's listening to this and saying, is my kid a spicy kid?
Well, there's temperamental things. I think that's what you're talking about, having somebody who has high intensity, high persistence, low flexibility, high sensitivity to all stimulus. And they can be incredibly gifted in one area, they can be the academic gifted kids, but really deficient in another that feels like it should just come naturally. And they refuse unjust rules. They won't participate in earned love, which is the old paradigm we grew up with. If you are good, you get affection, right? And they don't go for that. That's the temperament. Then there's also some stuff they have an outsized reaction to shame or any sense of a loss of autonomy. And so a lot of the stuff that works for a traditional kid, because they're so oriented to an adult, doesn't work with them. Now that's the temperamental stuff, but there's also the idea that your spicy one, I might spend a weekend with and be like, oh, they were pretty easy to be with. So what's that about? That's that sometimes we are walking in as the parent with some things that make it hard for us to parent that specific child, but there's nothing wrong with that child. And all the temperament things I said aren't what's wrong either. That's a leader. You're describing a powerful and spirited adult that's just really hard to parent. So there is this portion of maybe you as a mom have a really high need for order, and this kid is chaotic. Maybe you have a high need to control how things go because that's always worked out for you, and this kid isn't going to let you control them. They might let you be in charge, but not control them. And you might also have some wounding from what it was like for you to be little that you haven't looked at, and you're kind of repeating with this kid, or they're reminding you of your parent when you felt little, and you're like, hell nah, it's not happening again, maybe subconsciously. And so you're creating power struggles that don't need to be.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say is a spicy one. People have called them strong-willed, spirited, deeply feeling. There's lots of groovy names for them because there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that. I had my friend Joe Newman on. I was telling you about, he wrote a book called Raising Lions, and he himself would describe himself as, like you said, I'm a spicy one, my mom's a spicy one. He would be considered that way too. And he really has this attunement, just like you were able to. 2 things that really resonated with me, and it made me think of your work as I was reading your book too. And one was he said, defiance is healthy, right? It's not on us to change that. It's on us to teach kids how to really funnel that into something productive and good and healthy ways of expressing it, but it's not something that we necessarily have to pathologize, and it shouldn't scare us. So I loved that reframe on just the idea of defiance. And then the other one he said was that stronger-willed kids, spicy kids, they don't value approval, they value power. And there is nothing wrong with a person who values power. It's our perception of power. When we think of people in powerful places, we assume they're bad or corrupt, or we've assigned these names with power that don't feel good in our bodies. But the truth is like, if you have a kid who's like knows how to be a disruptor, knows they value power, they know their power, what a great kid to usher through this world.
Oh, yeah. And there's so many people pleasers who grew up trained to make nice and not make waves. And then they get saddled with a spicy one. And here's this kid doing whatever they darn well please. And the only change I would make to the author of the Lions book is let's look at what power is, because power does have a dirty feel to it. And power is a sense of impact. They want to know that they are impacting their environment. And sometimes they're going to do that in weird sensory ways, because they want to hear their own voice hit up against yours, or they want to feel their sibling fall down when they push them. But then they also want autonomy, the belief that I can navigate my own ship. I can decide what is best for me. And they also want authenticity, which is, a buzzword these days. But a spicy one is going to be who a spicy one is. They're not going to try to fit in the mold unless we as parents are super unhealed and push it all down and, as you said, pathologize it. And then they're at their therapist at 30 figuring out who they are. And eventually they'll get there. We can either facilitate that or we can pathologize it.
Yeah, I love that so much. So let's start where I usually like to start. And you do the same thing in the book, which I absolutely appreciate, which is it starts with us. What do we take away from that? This idea of like what most parents will come to me feeling very powerless, which I'm sure you experience in your work too. And so where do we begin if you are the parent who's feeling pretty powerless, and how do we teach them how to sort of remember that it does really begin with us, our reactivity, our ability to respond, managing and regulating our own emotions? Walk me through a little bit of the process that you share with parents and what you outline in the book.
Sure. I love it. I love your brain. You're a structured, linear thinker, and I need that. Can we start working together? Because I'm all over the place. I first want to say we can really only give to a child what we have first given ourselves. And that can be kind of upsetting to folks who are just laden with trauma and are like, no, I'm trying to do the best by my kid. But so often when I hear someone with great vitriol towards their child, it's really because they have great vitriol for themselves. They have contempt for the way they're showing up. And so one thing I like to, before we start prodding around in inner child stuff, which can feel like, obviously can feel very defended against that. If you had a tough childhood with lots of ACE score, a high ACE score, what's ACE stand for? Adverse childhood experiences. If you've had a lot of those, this can be work you need a therapist for. But figuring out what makes a good mom can be a really clarifying exercise, because sometimes we unconsciously think we are responsible for everything that happens to this kid, from this kid, by this kid. We even start to think that we're responsible for how they think or how they feel. And I think it's really important to put pen to paper and say a good mom, and then write that out and see if maybe somebody else could look at that and be like, wow, do you have a God complex? Because, for instance, we can affect the culture of our home, like the space in between us and our child. We can affect the culture between us and our higher power by calling in that bigger force for us. For me, it's Jesus. It doesn't have to be. It can be whatever, something bigger than you. So you're not alone in this, right? And we can affect the space inside us, like what we think. The first thought is none of our, oh, this kid is trying to kill me. It's okay that thought comes up naturally. There's a neural sort of pathway, an almost automatic. I see them roll their eyes at me or walk away from me, and I think this. That's okay. But we can take captive that thought and take a moment to expand our conscious pause before we react and choose the next thought. So writing out what that definition of a good mom is, you're not responsible. For instance, if you are trying to teach them how to hold the door for you, you can enact behaviors that you need to see, but let's say they do it with a really crappy attitude. That's none of your business. Or let's say they're really upset about a limit you set, but you feel like, no, this is an important limit. Them being upset is not in your purview of control. So if you think subconsciously that a good mom has a happy kid, well, good luck, because the spicy one is a curmudgeon. They're a George Costanza. They're an Eeyore, and they're just going to always notice, like, oh, you didn't do this. Like, you can throw a birthday party, have everything perfect, and they'll be like, well, I wanted clowns. I didn't want race cars. Like, they're going to have to learn how that alienates people, and you can't be responsible for their inner life. And I think as we reduce what we're responsible for in our job description, we can kind of lower the stress level that we're feeling.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much, because if we're thinking about one, yes, reducing our own sort of the load, right? What are we carrying that we believe we're responsible for, which in many cases, we know this as mothers, we're usually, like you said, the God complex is the perfect way to describe it. But excuse me, it's that we feel very responsible. And what I've said to a lot of the parents that I also work with too is that it's actually unfair to your kids when you start to make the way they present in the world, that when you start to assume your value lies in that, it's this very unfair burden that you're placing on them, because it's actually your responsibility to figure out the value and inherent worth that you have just as yourself, as a person. And it should not hinder or hinge on how your child behaves, how your child experiences emotions, how your child decides to react, respond, learn. And so when we can remove our sort of value from that and say, like you said, their inner world is for them to sort of really work through. It's not on us to always make them happy. It's on us to set those limits, create the conditions that help them develop and learn in the ways that they need.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. And it's on us to delight in this child, because there are not many people in their world that have the role power, the place of privilege to delight in them. And there are many places they can learn how to make a bed. They can learn how to cook from YouTube. They can Google how to get their first credit card, but they can't find anyone to delight in them the way a parent has that position. And so sometimes that means letting go of some dreams we had for who they are, if we are so in tension with them that we can't access the part of us that thinks they're already good enough, already so beautiful and fabulous and sparkly. And so that's another place that I spend a lot of time in the book, and I had to fight to keep in the love list, which is a list of descriptors that are beautiful about this kid that we need to almost marinate and meditate on, because when we do, everything in our body kind of softens, our shoulders go down, our jaw releases, we unclench, and we feel a little rosy and warm. And that's the body you want to bring to the conflicts, to the toughest times of parenting. You want to stay in that place that still sees the image of God on them and thinks they're beautiful, even as it's like, wow, you egged a house. That's our neighbor, and you were caught on camera.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that, right? So this kid is going to do crazy things, but can you continue while setting limits? I'm never saying delight in them and just let them do whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they need you to like them, and sometimes that's going to take some serious work.
I love that.
Well, the other thing when you were saying, like, what are the steps? I think we also need to raise our capacity for positive response. And I was calling it CPR in the book. I don't know if if I love that acronym, but it's this idea that we might have a baseline of this, my kid does this awful thing. They embarrass me in a situation, and I immediately think this. And when I think this, I feel tight and angry. And when I feel tight and angry, my action is I do this. And it's kind of a loop, right? So we want to catch that earlier and do some work with raising our ability to go to a positive thought rather than a negative thought. Those really negative thoughts are coming out of our survival brain. It's a whole different area of the cerebellum than our place that's like even neutral. We can't parent well from fight or flight. We aren't accessing our compassion for both ourselves and our child. And then all of a sudden, everything calms down and we don't like how we behaved. And in the end, you have to decide how you want to be no matter how they behave. So we don't know what's going to happen with them. We don't know how they're going to respond, but you get to choose how you're going to be. It's that old, you are the thermometer. No, you're not. You're the thermostat, not the thermometer. You are setting the intention, you're setting the culture, you're setting the vibe, and let it be warmth and delight, even as you and your child handle some difficult behaviors.
Yeah, I love that. There is so much I want to say. And I also have so much I still want to ask you. So with that, I think there's two things that I thought of as you were describing that. One is always on an initial call with a family, I will say to them, tell me about your child, but I want to know everything. Tell me the good stuff. And I love the list in your book, and it's long. And I love that it was long because there are so many good things. And you can see exactly what you described. The parent will kind of be ready to tell me, like, you don't understand. They talk back to me. They're rude. They never listen. And like, we're already like armed with our list. And I'll go, no, like, I bet they're funny. Like, tell me how funny they are. Cause I already know, cause I've worked with kids, and they'll go, actually, they're hilarious and they're really personable. And they're the kid who like says the most inappropriate thing at the perfect time. And like the comedic timing is genius, or they're clever, they're problem solvers, they're right. And I'll say, tell me what they love. Like if you came home and said, guess what's happening today? We are doing, and fill in the blank. I want to know what that is. Because for me to support a family going through something, I have to know the totality of that child, right? I have to know more than just what you see as quote unquote bad. Like you said, like if we can look at these things with much more neutrality, we can treat it with a little bit more grace and likely connect more with what they actually need rather than the story we're telling ourselves about that negative behavior. So I love that you're saying that. I love that you put that in the book. And thank you for keeping it in and making it hefty, because it's important, because you know this too. A lot of parents who are experiencing a child who is stronger willed are feeling very beat down and worn and very much stuck in the weeds, and they just can't see through that. I mean, I've even had a parent tear up and go, no one's ever asked me positive things about my kid. Every teacher tells me they're, a challenge. Everywhere I turn, they're the bad kid at the play date, the kid at the park that all the parents are looking at. Like, so the fact that you just said, like, tell me the cool things, like, I want to know, like, tell me a good joke that they said. Tell me like that they swore one day when they weren't, like, tell me the things that, all the good things. Like, I want to know everything. And it moved me.
Well, and I think there's like an unvoiced, maybe limiting belief that I'm not allowed to celebrate that stuff until I get these other behaviors on lock. Like, that kid is not representable enough yet, so I need to fix them before I can champion them. And that's not the case. The world is going to ding them. I mean, I didn't get into the sorority I wanted because I was a trash talker. I failed at my first marriage. I'm super happy. But I had to, this kid is an experiential learner. They aren't going to learn from your like, oh, well, actually, it's always better to do this. It's like, we'll see. I'll try it and then I'll know. And that is a painful thing to watch from the sidelines, because you see a lot of suffering that is very avoidable.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest thing. Yeah, for sure. And also, it's like, I always say strong-willed kids are really good at teaching us how to sit with our own discomfort. Because the more you can tolerate your discomfort, you can allow them to experience their discomfort. The more they can do that, the stronger they develop into like this big resilient person. And so I think when we take that away from them, because we fall back to the story you described of like, well, a good mom keeps her kid happy all the time. Well, gosh, talk about like one step away from fragility and being so easily swayed and influenced by external circumstances. Like, no, let's just teach our kids how to really sit in the hard things, because that's where the magic is.
Yes. And the universal thing that like when people come into, I have an 8-week program called Moms of Spicy Ones. And when they come in and say what the reason was that they're finally ready to get some help, usually they use the phrase, I'm sick of walking on eggshells. And to your point, walking on eggshells creates a kid with fragility. So I think we need to, and this is not like my idea. I think this came from, I first saw it in Hold On to Your Kids. Did you ever read that one? This idea of dancing your child to their tears earlier, helping them feel the limit earlier so they can get to that grieving part and stop resisting and start being super sad that they're not going to get to go around without a diaper today or whatever it is. But when we are like avoiding their upset because it does feel like, oh, I don't think I can handle it, we're teaching them to be afraid of their own feelings. And guess what? You can handle it when you start to go, oh, yeah, we've been here before. Like we've had this storm, and I can work on my calming my own body down, because there's a lot of attunement and entrainment that can happen, and mirror neurons. Like when you have that meltdown, and you will have many, I want you to become so blasé. And I don't mean that of like rolling your eyes at the kid or not connected, but more like, oh, this is part of their process. Nobody's in danger. I like to ask moms to say, like, who's upset here? Because if you don't really bring your awareness and mindfulness to this moment, you will think that you're upset too. And that's part of what you're avoiding. But you don't have to be upset just because your child's upset.
I agree. I teach the mantra of like, I am safe and so are they. Just like to remind your nervous system to not immediately get into this reactive state. I know you have so many good micro regulations in the book that are perfect and so accessible for parents. I teach a 4-step process to parents called PAR, and it's very similar in that it's just saying first pause, just pause. Like don't, you're going to feel so quick to jump in and go in with that corrective, whatever it might be. And then it's acknowledge, just give ourselves the grace of naming without judgment that like, I'm at a level 10. They just literally said the rudest thing to me and I'm ready to blow up, or I'm whatever it might be, and just acknowledge and then move into your response and make the response, what does my child need in this moment? And maybe that is to just hold my boundary and stay really calm and regulated like you're describing. And then the last R is reflect, because we don't spend enough time going back and going, what was that? Why do I freak out when their backpack is in the way and not put away? Why am I yelling at them about toys on the floor? Why am I like constantly walking around on eggshells, as you're saying, and taking that time to unpack a little bit of what's going on?
I want to add a little to PAR. PAR's amazing. I want the last R to be reflect and repair, because so much of actual intimacy in a relationship comes from messing up and taking and moving towards that person you hurt and repairing. I mean, if you think about your best girlfriends, you've had an argument at some point and you actually moved beyond that. Whereas the people that fall away when you have a conflict, they're gone. But there's something so intimate and so cherished about a parent that will actually move towards you to say, hey, can I take a minute and say, I don't like how I treated you there. I want to apologize to you. I treated your body roughly, and you do not deserve that. You deserve to feel safe. And we're not adding a but, next time you made nope, that's not part of the apology. And I'd even like to usher people to go a little farther. If you really want to make it a healing repair, is you ask the child, what was that like for you? What's it like for you when mommy is rough with your body? And they may say, it's fine, mommy, it's fine, the younger ones. But helping them articulate it, like kind of moves it through and takes away that shame and giving them the words for it versus we just don't talk about it again. It happened. It was awful. We suffer from this belief that if I just don't talk about it, it will be less remembered. I see you kind of swallowing what's coming up for you as you think about that.
No, I love it. I love everything that you're saying right now. I think that repair is so important. And I also think I feel sadness for the generation of kids like you and I probably who never experienced repair. Like there was just a generation of parents where you just did not apologize and you didn't acknowledge.
And we feel a little bit crazy. Like I remember stormy nights where my mother raged at me, character assassination, screaming at me. I'm sobbing, crying myself to sleep. We never talked about that.
No, there was no resolve. There was no like, now what?
So in a way, it makes you feel like, did it happen? But I know it did, And the other thing about PAR is I think your first R, don't forget to reflect on what do I need? Maybe I'm not ready. I'm sure you do this when you do the whole thing, but maybe I'm not ready yet to be the parent I want to be. So I get to step away. Maybe I can't be the person that holds space right now for this tantrum. Like maybe for me, I need to walk away and breathe, and maybe I need to move my body. I think a lot of people don't talk about part of calming down is some kind of movement because you've created all this electricity. Your stress response has been triggered. So there's all kinds of hormones dropping down, the cortisol that's meant to make you move and run from a lion. But the only lion is your screaming kid who will not get in the car seat. So maybe you do jumping jacks. Maybe you do some weird kicks. Do what your body needs to move through that anger.
Yeah. And that somatic work is so helpful with kids too. I think we forget sometimes just the value and like how much movement can help. I love the suggestion of what do I need? Usually I teach that in the reflection. I love it. I just created a journal about PAR because parents asked me to. And I wrote about sort of how to use it and how I would use it. And then later like walked you through just sort of lined pages to openly reflect. But I love that question. I love that idea of like, what do I need in the context of like, and then giving yourself permission to say like, I don't know, I can't tolerate the tantrum. I can't manage. I just don't even know what to do with myself during that moment. So with that, can we just talk some strategies? Because there are so many in the book. I just want to let listeners know you have so many great ways of walking parents through the storm, I say. Because one of the most common questions I get is like, okay, but what do we do then? Like there's a lot around doing. And so how do you walk parents through the moment, the tantrum, the argument, the talking back, the defiance? Like
I'm looking around for my book because I have a 1-pager called like the Meltdown Manifesto. I'm going to grab it. But when someone says, what do? I generally do pause them and say, often you do nothing. It's more important who you be when your child is upset, disappointed, defiant than what you do, because we want to really have a regulated nervous system that's helping teach their nervous system how to also co-regulate. Often anything you say, they're in full, the front of their brain has shut down and they are in sort of their prehistoric brain and they're thinking in verbs, run, hit, cry, and they aren't taking in a lesson. There's no teaching that happens during a meltdown. This is it's a signal for you to say, okay, here's that fire drill where I get to decide who I want to be in this. And maybe it is somebody who does deep exhales and it's like, I want you to tend to yourself, let the customer service levels fall, plummet. I don't care, because it's more important who you are in that. I think what people are really asking is, how do I stop the meltdowns? And sometimes the meltdowns are just going to be part of this child's process. And like they have 4 or 5 meltdowns they have to get through before they're going to end the day. And that's sort of, you have to believe that each time they lose it and you stay grounded and calm, that they are learning through this experience. And it's like almost like a sprout underneath the surface that you can't see, but you're making an impact because they're having a tough time with a trusted adult and their brain is learning like there's another option. It's like you're buying time as they mature. Anyway, I was buying time until I could find the page of a cheat sheet for surviving a meltdown. So first I say, it's the same thing as yours. Cast a conscious pause. You want to cultivate an inner calm, an unaffected exterior, which you can fake it till you make it. So you don't want to have your eyebrows up really high or your eyes hardened. Like, take a minute to like have everything soften and melt and connect to your own heart space and the sensations in your body. And like I said, exhale rather than a lot of deep inhales, which can signal to your body that you're scared or you need to run, right? Then I want you to call in your highest self. So you've done a conscious pause, and now I want you to call in the highest self, the version of you that is the parent you're trying to emulate. For me, it's God in the movie The Shack, which is like 20 years old. Nobody's seen it. But I think it's Olivia Spencer, and it's just that warm female version of our creator. And I want you to ask yourself, who's feeling upset? Notice it's not you. And remind yourself that they are learning frustration tolerance. And this is a good thing. And then I want you to conjure your compassion, both for yourself and for them. And that's where there's a beautiful, having a mantra that like you literally put it where you can read it. You said, I am safe and so are they. You can also say, this is not an emergency. You can say, I can allow these emotions. I'm safe in their storm. My child needs me. It's not personal. You can say things like, it's more important to me to be kind than on time. Because I don't know about you, but my worst parenting is either when somebody is watching or when I'm time starved. When there's a deadline and it's like, please don't make us late again. Everything clinches up. And then you control what you can control in the meltdown. You want to control your body or arrange your body to appear as if you're on the same team. A lot of us tower over a kid, or our hands go on our hips. Their mammalian body is picking up from you threat or support, right?
Yeah.
So be quiet. Create a friendly presence with an empathetic facial expression. Lower your shoulders. Maybe get low to the ground if that's less threatening to them. And use your voice sparingly. You don't really need to be talking. Maybe you're saying, it's okay, I'm here. But just allow for silence. If you can, stay nearby. Maybe get some handiwork, like some knitting or something that calms you. Do not grab your phone, because that feels like, I'll wait, like bored. And then choose a physical motion that calms you. Like I said before, for me, I do a lot of tapping. So I'll tap my thumb to my first finger, then to my middle, then to my ring, then to my pinky, and back again. And I say, I don't say it out loud, but in my brain, especially when I'm angry, I say, I love you. God bless you.
Through gritted teeth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Peace be with you. And I keep going, and I just say those underneath my, just to soften my own heart. Because this is the work of parenting. This is not, there's not an anomaly. It's not an example of a bad kid. So that's what I would do during a meltdown.
Yeah, it's perfect. And I love that. There's a lot of, I feel exactly the same. And I tell a lot of parents, it's like you almost want to teach yourself that to have a almost automatic response, that as you see them dial up, there is an automatic dialing down that starts happening in you, right? And it's so hard. I mean, I've just worked with thousands of kids, and when you can start to do that, and I think people don't really believe you when they come to you first in that really high state of stress, that the de-escalation that can occur when you start to teach yourself how to completely dial down in their most dialed up moments is the thing that moves you through dysregulation much faster than a strategy, a disciplinary inaction, a timeout, or whatever it is that you're trying. And I've witnessed it multiple times. And like you've mentioned mirror neurons too, it's true. Like I used to teach, I taught kids for 12 years before switching gears and then working on the medical side of things as a speech therapist. And then I would say twice a year when I was a teacher, I would get laryngitis. And you're not sick, you just don't have a voice. But I'd be like, I don't want to call in. I want to go see the kids. I want to teach. I want to, so I would go in and I would just recognize it's going to be harder because I can't really, no one can hear me. And so I would say to the kids in a whisper, like, my voice is not here today. And, I need you guys to like really, really use the strongest listening ears possible so you can hear my tiny voice today, but we're going to do this. And I thank you guys for helping, right? Making them sort of my support team. You could hear a pin drop in our classroom that day. They started to, it's the same way, like if someone calls you and they're like, hey, I can't be loud. And you're like, okay, what's going on? But like, you're not in an environment where you have to lower your voice. You're just automatically mirroring that same tone of voice. And it would be remarkable. I should have probably taken data on it, but every single time I taught without a voice, it was the quietest, most manageable, easiest day to be a teacher. So it just speaks to like on a very scientific level what happens.
Yes, going quiet, but also going to a deeper register. No, we are not going to play with grandma's figurines. Like playing with our voice, so important. You need to do a reel where you start off like, hey, I want to tell you something. And you tell that story because that's powerful.
I love that. That's a very good idea. Thank you. Okay, I'm being really mindful of time, but maybe we got to like page 1 of my 5 pages of notes. So I know that there's so much in the book and parents are going to really love it. But I would love to know, just on a personal note, at what point do you think with your child and as your own parenting journey unfolded, when did you realize like, I have to be the one to really do the change within? And when did you start to see a shift in your daughter?
I made her the villain probably until kindergarten. So in kindergarten, I was her. I wanted to be the Daisy Girl Scout troop leader, and by the fifth meeting, I had to quit because she would stand up on a table across the room and we would be competing for who was in charge. And I couldn't be with all these sweet, mild child girls while my daughter was doing a tap dance. And then one day she fell off onto her head, and it was like, okay, I'm done. And during all of that, I would have been like, oh, I don't like her. I love her, but I don't have to like her. And I would just talk about my kid. And then when I finally found a therapist to take her to, a play therapist, somebody whose specialty was little people, I brought her once. And then the second time, the lady said, why don't you come by yourself next time? And I thought, yes, let's finally talk about this psychopath and what we need to do to protect the world from her. Like, I'm ready. I will get a babysitter. And so I went that next week, and then I went the next week, and then I went the next week, and then I went the next week, and the next week, and the next week. And for 2 years, we unpacked my childhood, lies I was telling about myself that I was then putting right on my daughter. Like, oh, she's so bossy. She's so emotional. She's so sensitive. She's selfish. Those were all things that were said about me when I was little. And so I put everything I've learned in this book, but I will be upfront with you that for me, it was therapy. It was having a woman sit across from me who delighted in me and loved me and would make faces when I told stories where I'd be like, what is that? And she's like, oh, that's empathy. So I needed another person to help me. And then I began to shift, and we'd still brainstorm, like, what do I do? She's doing this or that. But I would say by the time she was in third grade, we were just beautifully connected, and we started a mommy and me group. It was like a redemption story and we're very close now. And yes, she's still a powerhouse worthy or capable of great disrespect and great ingenuity, and she can motivate her peers to do the coolest things. But I'm not threatened by it anymore. When I was growing up, my mom used to say, there's only going to be one queen in this house. I am very comfortable with there being 2 queens in my house. We're fine.
Amazing. Oh, I love that story so much. It's going to resonate with so many people. I'm sure it already does with your community as well. But yeah, there's so much to unpack in that. It's funny. Someone had asked me recently, and I will share my answer with you, but had asked me the question, what do you think makes sort of a good parent, or what did you tell yourself, when you were parenting your kids? And I said, honestly, my husband and I were really we would laugh about it. We were young parents. And then one day we kind of said to ourselves, what's the aim? What do we really want? In terms, we're getting through it and we're doing all the things, but what's the hope? And he said, you know what? I hope one day when they're adults, they still want to hang out with us. And that was it. And then after we said, that's our goal, we just want to raise productive, thoughtful, conscientious humans that one day when their time is their time, that they will still carve out time for us. And once we knew that was the aim, can I just tell you, if we reverse engineered that from then on, it's we didn't split hairs over the small stuff anymore. And it calmed something in us. It shifted things in us where we didn't, it was we started to realize well, then how do we parent that way? How are we the people that are going to raise kids who want to be around us all the time, or just with us when they get to choose how they use their time? And I'm happy to report, and I'm sure it's the same for you too, we're still usually their first call when something's wrong. And that feels like I probably did something right. A lot of things wrong, but a few things landed.
Love that. Yes, that's a beautiful, and knowing what your long-term goal is really crucial. If you do this parenting right, what do you imagine or dream could happen? And holding on to that and reinforcing it in the things you do. We just kind of have to bring more conscious and reflection to our parenting, which is great about your journal. Been so good to be with you.
Mary, you too. I'm so excited for the book. I'm excited to share it with so many people. And I know so many people are going to get a lot out of it. We barely, we got just to the surface. So anybody listening to this, there's so much in her book that you're going to love. Mary, you remind me why I love doing this podcast, because I get to really have thoughtful conversations with really awesome people. And that is literally just a joy in my life. So thank you so much for being here.
No, it was a pleasure. I'm glad to have known you.